All right, so on this episode of, we don't know what we're going to call it yet, maybe
Bev
Bev Talks. Right now it's Coffee Talks. It's going to be episode 2 of Coffee Talks. We have Alicia here today.
Hi.
This series we're going to be changing a little bit to talk about careers, and often when I was growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I wish that there was something that I could have listened to that said, hey, this is what a mechanical engineering would do, or this is what a software engineer, or this is what a pilot's common sense, but you know what,
Not
some
always,
some
but the
of
granular
these,
details.
yeah, maybe the granular detail, maybe the lifestyle of how it would be. I think that would have changed my career. It could have changed my career path. I shouldn't say it would. Could have changed my career path. So the focus of this series will be to discuss different, let's say, careers in different companies of a regular person. Well, you're special. Of a regular person in a day-to-day
Everyday
life.
people.
Yeah, everyday people, in an average Joe. Day-to-day life.
The average jit.
The average Jit, like the channel name. And the day-to-day lives and the company, or the company culture maybe. And we're going to talk a little bit about the person themselves. This will hopefully help understand and calibrate yourself, the viewer, to the person being interviewed. And hopefully there's something that everybody can learn something about.
I'm excited.
So on today's episode, we have Alicia Mistry, and she also goes by Alicia Mistry. And we have grand appearances of Nala once in a while. And we're going to be talking about her. So Alicia and I have known each other for almost 3 years. What? 3 years?
3 years this October.
Oh man, 3 years. 3 years. Wow, 3 years for now. She is my best friend at the moment, with
Second to Nala.
Second to Nala. Nobody beats Nala right now. But yeah, so Alicia here is in the PR background in real estate. So why don't you give us a little rundown of what you do and who you are, and maybe what we could start off with, like your childhood history and what your interests are and everything. So give us an intro of you.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on today. I am honored to be your first interviewee. I think this is going to be a really special channel, and I'm excited for all the audience to tune in.
Yeah, let's hopefully.
A little bit about me. I am a publicist by career choice. I fell into real estate back in 2014 through an internship at a local brokerage in my hometown where I was raised. And I just applied on a Craigslist ad, and I managed to get the internship, and it was less than 5 minutes from my parents' house. I was at community college at the time, and I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew around what I wanted to be. I just didn't know exactly the industry. And so I kind of just fell into real estate. It started off with the normal homes that you see, whether they're tract homes or local suburban developments almost. I worked with the marketing manager, and it was my role and responsibility to give agents and their listings a platform and generate publicity on their behalf. So whenever it was new agents joining the brokerage, I would do an onboarding call with them. I would put together a new agent press release, and I would send it to our local publications if they wanted to cover it. Anytime there were any types of listings or sales, spectacular leases. I would put together a pitch. I would get it approved from our internal team. Communicate with the agent. Sometimes I would do a tour, which was always exciting because I like design, and we can go into that a little bit. And I just helped the agent generate press and publicity on their listings and themselves, and they could use it on what was growing in social media, on their website, on blogs, the brokerage newsletter, kind of the whole shebang. And once I graduated from CSUN in 2016, Cal State Northridge. Go Matadors. And I joined my first agency, full service creative agency, and we specialized in public relations for luxury residential real estate, for commercial real estate, some architecture and design, and I worked with some really notable brokerages around LA County. And I kind of just did the same thing of generating publicity for agents and their listings, and I was able to work on some really profound, at the time and still to this day, really notable projects. Listings that would sell for millions of dollars. And I was fortunate enough to meet with the agents, sometimes meet with the sellers, tour the homes, and just really understand the architecture, the design, why it was a unique home, or what made it newsworthy, which is always a draw for PR. And I was able to share that story with not just the writers who were writing those stories at the end of the day, but seeing family, friends, people that I didn't know reach out and say, hey, I read this in New York Times, or Wall Street Journal covered the exclusive of this one stunning estate called the Alwood Estate. And it took a few years to sell, and we did an event on it. It sold for $180 million, or it was, let me re-credit, it was listed for $180 million. And that was by far the biggest estate publicity I had ever done. And it was just really cool to be a part of that campaign. And I think that just really set off the trajectory for my career.
So, taking a step back, what drove you into what was your major again?
I
journalism?
majored in journalism with an emphasis in public relations, and I minored in interactive marketing.
So what drove you, so the viewers can understand, what drove you to select
PR.
journalism? Let's start there,
Okay.
right? Like, so what drove you to select journalism as a career or undergrad?
Yeah. So I have always, from a young age, I've loved to read. I really enjoy writing. I like storytelling. I, back in middle school, had this amazing teacher that wanted us to put together a career plan of sorts. And I was talking to her about journalism because you could write for the school paper. And she had mentioned, hey, Alicia, you really like storytelling. You have an affinity for connecting with people, and I think you'd be really good at broadcast journalism. And I was like, broadcast? Like being an anchor on a news station? I don't know about that,
Yeah, I don't
but
know about
maybe
that.
I
No
could
idea.
try. And I did my research report around broadcast journalism, and I had to interview a couple of journalists and news anchors for my project. And I liked interviewing with them, but their day-to-day lives I found didn't align with mine. And the thought of being live in front of millions of people over TV, just my anxiety kind of shot through the roof.
It's a little scary. Yeah, it's a little scary. Well, you're on TV. You're going to be on YouTube in front of millions of people. Hopefully, millions of people.
Yes, but this will hopefully be cut and edited, and
hopefully millions of people watch it. That's the hope.
Fingers crossed.
That's the hope.
You got to start somewhere, right?
Yep, exactly.
So broadcast, I kind of just crossed it out. No thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. And then when I was in high school, I joined the print journalism department. And I was a photo editor, and I wrote some breaking news types of stories for the publication, and I enjoyed it. I liked the idea of storytelling and not having my face be everywhere, but having my writing be in issues, and I thought I would really take that on. And so when I went to undergrad, I joined the school paper at my community college. And I wrote for breaking news there. I also wrote for the police department, and I was able to write and interview some really amazing people for some amazing stories. And I remember the last semester of community college, I was there for 2 years. My last semester, I was writing about a drug epidemic in my suburban small town, and there was an organization called Not One More that I wanted to interview, and I interviewed the chair or the program director, and I asked him if he had any people that came through his doors that would be open for an interview. And that, I think, was really hard because a lot of people, especially in the realm of narcotics, prefer to be anonymous because they're ashamed, or it's a very judgmental space. And I was a journalist and an investigative journalist at that, and it was a struggle to find people that were willing to be interviewed. But I found 2 people, and I'm not going to name their names, but one I actually graduated from high school with. She was a really great person. I didn't know a lot about her. I did not know that she was a part of the group that participated in narcotics. I wasn't that type of person. I just wasn't involved in that at all. And so interviewing people that were raised or grew up in that type of culture was very different from how I was raised, and it was hard to just understand where they were coming from. Not being judgmental by any means, but just understanding their backgrounds. And I was very fortunate enough to interview with them, and I wrote a story. And going back to journalism and print journalism, I wrote a story about the epidemic, and it managed to get the front page, bottom fold of the last issue.
Front page is what
and
matters.
I had to fight with my editor to get that story to run because it was very controversial, but I felt like I needed to be told. And I was really, really happy with the way it turned out. And I was happy that I was able to share stories that the people that I interviewed didn't mind me sharing. And that was just, it was almost like a full circle moment of like, oh, okay, maybe journalism and maybe print media is something that I'll go into.
So this is what drove you to say, hey, maybe I actually do like journalism. The idea of sharing or learning about something and sharing with the world felt like you're like, this feels satisfying.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It
So-
almost was a clear moment that, okay, maybe this is a mutual agreement between me and my career path that I could go down.
So then you went and finished your journalism career.
Yeah,
Or
so
I shouldn't say career, your graduate degree. Or your
My
Your
undergraduate.
undergraduate degree.
Yeah, my bachelor's. So while I was in community college, I was in a class and I met a really great friend, and we were both going to CSUN and majoring in journalism, and I was like, oh, what do you want to do? And she told me about PR. Show me about public relations. And I was like, what in the world is PR? Because I had never heard of it. I had heard of publicists from like celebrities having publicists and things of that nature, but I was like, I don't know about that. She told me more, and I went to CSUN with a bit of an open mind of like, maybe there's more to explore than just print. And so I started taking classes in PR, and I kind of just fell into it, and I was like, oh, this is actually more my speed. I don't have to be a writer. I can write if I want to, and I can send factual details to people. The writers can write it, and I don't care if I have a byline or not. But what I really, really enjoyed was networking. I think being a mediator between clients and journalists was more my speed of like, I can share my clients' stories, but I don't have to write it, and I don't have to kind of do all of the investigativeness and credibility, and I do need all the factual details. I needed to make sure that the way in which I'm sharing my clients' stories is accurate. However, I don't have to chase down a lot of people. At least that's what I thought. And I kind of just fell into it, and I've stuck by it because at the end of the day, I really love what I do.
So that's awesome. So so let's maybe for the viewers differentiate between journalism and what public relations is. Like, what's the difference? Like, when I think of journalism, I'm thinking of someone that's, writing the articles on the newspaper, right? What is public relations in your role, right?
Yeah.
For you, like, what is it that you're doing that's different, or maybe like what's the differentiation?
Sure. So journalism is a really big category, and it's gotten to be a bigger category over the years because when you think of journalism, you don't just think of media anymore in terms of print, broadcast, magazines, PR. You also think of marketing and advertising. You think of social media and influencers and events. It's a huge creative industry. And I think the main differentiation between journalism and PR is journalism is more about the stories themselves. So the stories written in publications, the stories written online, told over broadcast or over podcasts like this one, whether they're any type of interview, I would say, is more like journalism. It's interviews and resulting stories. Public relations is almost it's almost as if you're acting as a liaison between the clients and their stories and the journalists who write their stories. And especially executives, directors, the really high up people, they have a tendency to do everything. And it's hard for their story to be told in the way in which they want, especially if they're a publicly traded company, especially if they're a notable company or have a perceived reputation. And then the journalist just writing about those stories, not having concrete evidence, not having the factual details, being super opinionated. And in PR, it's our job to act as a bridge between the two. And so we're able to share our clients' stories and have them be thought leaders in their respective industries, while also working with journalists to make sure that their stories are sound, they are factual, and they're positive for the most part. When you think of PR, a lot of people immediately jump to negative stories or crisis communications, and it's having to navigate, oh shoot, so-and-so leaked this story and now it's all over the news. Right. Or something happened with this company and they're going under, or it's just a terrible, terrible story. And it's our job in PR to mitigate those stories, to make sure that our clients and their best interests are at the forefront. And so they're not being slandered over media. They're not being discredited, that there's no truth to their stories. And especially in today's day and age, it's hard for people to know what's credible and what's not. You can read news anywhere, from TikTok to Reddit to BBC News to the New York Times. And depending on where you get your news, it could be very opinionated in certain directions. And usually, people who, well, no matter where you read your news, you have a certain opinion, and you tend to align yourself with the opinions of the publications or whatever outlet is providing you with that news. And so, not going into politics, you lean into what you align with. And I think it's, at the end of the day, it's very, very important that no matter where you get your news from, that it's from a credible source. It's not just a credible source, but you can actually have concrete evidence as to why it's so factual. And from there you can position your own opinions without feeling like you don't know what's going on because you don't have all the facts in your hand. And as a journalist, it's super important to have all the facts in your hand before your story ever gets published.
So circling back to the question of what's the difference between journalism and PR. Journalism might be somebody that's sharing the story, and PR is the person that's linking who the story's about to the journalist and making sure the right image and right information is translated over to the journalist so they can write their story.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's the difference between a writer at Los Angeles Times and my client, a real estate brokerage, and me. I represent the real estate brokerage first and foremost, and I provide those factual details to the writer at Los Angeles Times to put together their own respective story that they're going to publish. And hopefully, 8 times out of 10, it's exactly the way we all want it to go. Their story gets turned out. It's positive, it's wonderfully credited, and our client is over the moon because they received press that we secured from PR. And everybody kind of wins. One thing that I will say as a main differentiator between PR and, let's say, marketing or advertising is everything PR is, it's unpaid. And what I mean by that is our clients, a brokerage, pays us a retainer, which is a set amount of money a month, whether or not we produce stories on their behalf, but it's our job to produce stories, so we do that. Versus advertising or marketing, you're paying for the placement in news. And so when we're pitching media, when we're pitching a story on behalf of our clients to LA Times, the writer at LA Times doesn't have to write about the story. They could care less. But as a journalist, if it's super important to their readers, they're going to want to cover that story, and they tend to want to cover it the earliest they can, which is why we gather all the details on our end. Once we get the green light from our client, we send it over to the journalist, and they write the story, and then, our clients are happy once that story comes out, and then we can send it off to social media and advertising and everybody else to secure more interest.
Well, that sounds exciting. Sounds satisfying.
I think it's more exciting, or rather more satisfying, because it's earned. I'm not having to pay for a story, and I feel like when you pay for something, your expectations are higher. Versus when you don't pay for something, but it's a pleasant outcome, it feels a little more rewarding and organic.
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely.
what PR is.
Absolutely. So fast forward to today, right? What is your title, right? And what is, in a nutshell, walk us through a day-to-day of your role. Let's
Oh my goodness.
keep it, maybe we keep it a little higher level so that somebody can understand, like, what does a day-to-day look like, and what is your title? Let's start there.
Yeah, so I am a senior publicist. I'm a senior publicist at a full-service creative agency called Wicked. I've been there for just over 4 years, and our agency specializes in luxury residential real estate, high-end development, hospitality, travel tourism. It's a really fun agency to work with.
Okay, so you could assume, like, all of real estate. You guys are writing stories about them, or you're the broker between the journalists writing about the stories and what's exciting about these properties and so on, right? So, like, what is, if someone that wants to be somebody like you, like a PR publicist, what can they expect on a day-to-day life? Like, what would that be like?
Sure. So at Wicked, as a senior publicist, I spearhead the luxury residential real estate division. It's a very small division within PR for Wicked. My colleague, she spearheads the hospitality travel. I spearhead the luxury residential. And a day-to-day is always communicating with our clients. I manage 3 clients right now, but within those 3 clients, there are multiple divisions, multiple teams within a brokerage, or luxury agents that do multi-million-dollar sales volume a year, and they require a lot of attention and a lot of consistent communication. And so it's my job to be that person for them, and whenever they have PR needs, whenever we can be proactive with PR and a journalist is writing about a story and they want an expert, we put them forth as a thought leader in their industry, so they're constantly getting recognition for the job that they're doing while also supplying an expert opinion to the writer for their story.
So how does it work? So you have these subdivisions. How does a story come out? So walk me through an example, high-level example of how does a story get published.
Sure.
From one of these
So
agents.
I'll give you the lay of the land on 2 different sides. One is a proactive story, and a proactive story is one that our team puts together, and then we share it with the writer for consideration. And so that could mean that we have an agent that is going to be listing a $100 million home on Wednesday. In order for us to be able to tell that story to the writer, so they write about the story, we need to make sure that we have all the details on the property. We have quotes from the agent saying, the story, this property is amazing because of X, Y, and Z. The market is X, Y, and Z, and this is why a home of this caliber deserves this kind of recognition. And making sure the photography from the listing is included in our story, making sure any architecture designer is not just quoted, but we have their bio, we have a one-pager of property details. If there's something unique about the home, we make sure we have those details. If a tour is required, our team goes and tours the property with the agent and or the seller to really understand full circle what this listing is about. That way we can do our best to generate as much publicity around this property as possible once it comes to market. And the end goal for everybody is to make sure this property gets sold for as much money in as little time as possible. So knowing that we need all the details in hand, once we get those, and it takes a while to get all of those, then we pitch Wall Street Journal, for example. Wall Street Journal is a very special publication because it's read worldwide. They are super particular with their stories, and they require what's called exclusivity, which means nothing about the property can be online before their story is published. It can't be on the MLS. It can't be written by Bloomberg. It can't, nothing. It doesn't exist.
So they have to be the first.
So they have to be the first to break the story. Once Wall Street Journal publishes their story, then we're able to go to our full media list, and we have, it's almost like a media contact database of this writer at Bloomberg and this writer at The Real Deal, this writer at Mansion Global and LA Times, and so on and so forth. We are constantly building, maintaining, connecting, and collaborating with so many media outlets and writers every single day, every single week, on behalf of our clients. And it's fun to actually pitch the story and be like, yes, LA Times wants to write about this story. Cool. And, the story was just featured in Robb Report. It's such a glossy online story. It's actually going to be in their upcoming November issue.
So that's
it's almost like
part.
A slam dunk.
So seeing your work is the exciting part. This is like what I did.
Not just seeing my work come out, seeing that we pitched the story to Robb Report and they're covering it. Yes, that's a win. Hearing from our clients, you guys are amazing, and I can't believe you guys hit it out of the park with all of this press, and we're putting together a full report on it. We're putting it on social media. It's on our newsletter. We've had so many inbounds from potential buyers that didn't know this property existed until they read about it in Realtor.com or LA Times. It's just, our work impacts so many people that we don't have communication on, but so many people see our work, and I feel like that is just so cool.
Yeah. So going back to what is a day-to-day in your life would look like in your role, it's mostly helping, for you it's the real estate agents, so helping the agents get their, I should say, pitches about their listings out to these big news outlets, right? Like Forbes or Wall Street or whoever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the day-to-day. That's kind of what the focus is?
In a nutshell, yes.
Okay. Do you think that, do you do something that you didn't expect you would do in this role? Like what's one
I
thing
did
that,
a lot.
Yeah, what's one thing that you weren't expecting but you do often as a publicist?
Cold call?
Cold call.
It's not cold calling. I will rephrase. It's calling, it's being on the phone with journalists more than I thought I would be.
Mm.
A lot of it, don't get me wrong, is just done over email.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get the occasional call from a writer and be like, hey, we're covering your story, but like, we want to interview the seller,
Mm-hmm.
or we want to interview the agent. Can you just connect us?
Yeah.
And I'll be on those calls and make sure, everything is dandy and, our client isn't being taken on for a joyride when they don't want to share details or, but a lot of it is like when we have events or we have a special groundbreaking almost, a new project is launching. There's some type of launch party involved.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times agents like to have media there.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely want media to cover the groundbreaking. And unfortunately, media just aren't as receptive to events just because they're so busy. And the last thing that they want to do is go to an event and feel required to write about a story. But I think it's very, very important for media to be involved in that aspect. And you get to see a cool home, don't get me wrong. You can be there for 10 minutes and then you can leave. It's almost just like showing face at an event. But getting on the phone with the media and being like, hey, we have this launch event. We'd like to invite you. Do you want to bring, your
Photographer.
your News Live truck to this launch event? And they're like, no. It's hearing those like no's more than yeses. That kind of sucks because I personally love all the yeses and I don't want to deal with any of the no's.
Yeah.
I'm not a salesperson in
all
that
of us
regard.
all of us love the yeses. Hello, Papash.
Yeah.
Say
But
hi.
it's a part of the job. You got to get it done. And it doesn't matter what role you're in, whether you're the director of PR or you're an account coordinator, you still do it. You're still on the phone.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe the amount of calling and cold calling. It's technically cold calling. But with some, I don't know. Would you consider cold calling? Actually, I don't know. That's a good question.
I know the journalists.
Yeah, you know the
I've
journalists
worked
and you
with the
have
journalists.
a topic what you want to talk about. And
It's
in their
almost like-
relevance. So I don't know if it'd be, well, let's consider it cold calling. Okay, so what do you think are some skills, look, name 2 skills that are important in this career path for someone that's just starting? What are 2 skills?
Definitely communication. And it's communication in terms of being on the phone, emailing. You're constantly going back and forth. There is an email thread with 100 emails and you have to be on top of it. So like communication, especially from agents and your clients, is super important. If there's no communication, something is wrong because your clients like to be informed at all times, regardless of if you have something to say. So communication is number 1. I would say the other is reputation management. And I say reputation management because in PR is publicity, it's a frame. Your career could be done. Your client's career could be done in an instant if reputation management and crisis communications isn't handled correctly. You hear about a terrible story that broke and you don't put together a conference, a media conference. So media and journalists can ask questions directly to whomever it is. That's super important. And if you don't know how to handle that, or you don't feel comfortable handling that, that part of the job is very sink or swim.
Do you feel... Sorry, go ahead.
You think about whether it's sports, usually after a game, there's a media conference. A basketball player or two, will go into a room, there's a whole bunch of media there, and they're answering questions because the writers are writing their stories. And of course, they want to have whomever it is quoted. The other part of that is, as somebody in my position in politics, the White House has a press representative. The president isn't always going to speak at these discussions, and especially if it's something that demands world attention, the PR representative needs to have all the facts and needs to be able to relay those details to the media in a very conversational manner, in a very positive manner, if it's not handled correctly, it's going to be a crisis manner, and the last thing you want is to have a crisis on your hands.
So do you feel like when you first started, you knew this skill? Or
Absolutely
did
not.
You learned it along the way?
I learned it along the way.
So you don't need to...
I was a fly on the wall for a lot of them. It wasn't until more recently I've been handling them on my own, or I've been handling them with my boss, or I've been handling them with my clients in a group setting to make sure that their reputation isn't tainted, that our clients are just ultimately happy. You can't, at the end of the day, control the messaging if a story gets out or if a story is published in a certain manner. If the factual details are correct, but the opinions aren't, those are opinions, and we don't have the authority to change them. As much as we would like to write the story by ourselves sometimes, it doesn't work that way. And I think it's really important for clients of all calibers to understand that it's in our best interest to give all the factual details. If there's anything that could cause a commotion, let's table publicity until we actually figure out whether or not we want that publicity. Because if it's already public information, the media is going to write about it whether we want them to or not. And at the end of the day, if we want a positive story, we don't want that information in there. So maybe a story isn't better after all. As people always say, PR is better than no PR, or bad PR is better than no PR. And I don't necessarily think that's true. Good PR is better than no PR.
That makes sense. Good PR is better than
Good PR is better than bad PR.
No PR.
Of course.
No PR is probably better than bad PR.
It depends, because sometimes you don't have a choice.
Yeah, true.
And you need to put out a statement on behalf of your clients to show your audience, to show their audience that they're working on it, that this is an unfortunate circumstance. And they could have done better. They should have done better. But at the end of the day, this is the way the cards were dealt.
Yeah.
And let's have this conversation, and then let's move on.
Yeah. Okay. So my final question for you is about, what advice would you give yourself, younger self, knowing what you know today? If you could put it in one sentence, what would that be?
That's a really good question.
I know, I wrote them. Good question, guy. Just kidding.
If I could tell my younger self one thing, what would it be? If you really love what you do, it doesn't matter what comes after. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter whether you have a terrible story come out or a terrible client that you're working with briefly. If you love what you do, the good things will come and they'll find their way. It might take a little bit of time, but they'll come.
Yeah. And at least you're enjoying it as you're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. That's great advice that I think everybody should live by. Well, there you have it, folks. We've got a PR person here. She answered it like she was a PR person. Well, do you have something else that you want to share to the younger generation?
No, I think, just if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah.
You can follow me.
I'll drop her Instagram account in the comments or in the description. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment away and
reach out.
Yeah.
We can do a virtual coffee date, a virtual boba date.
We forgot to even talk about what we're drinking today. We had the beverage coffee talks. So I have a mango boba.
I have a Thai milk tea with boba, almond milk.
Mine wasn't boba. Mine was lychee jelly.
Lychee jelly. Mango milk tea with lychee.
Tea, which is a little too sweet, I think.
Yeah, usually 25 or 50% sweet. It's pretty good.
It's a little sweet.
But
so, all right.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for joining, everybody, and that's it.